Okay, so we are good to start. Okay. All right. Hey everyone, thank you for all joining me for this AMS session. I'm Shazib Ahmed, and I'll be hosting this AMS session today. A little bit about myself. Currently, I'm working as a community manager at Cloudways, so I deal with partnerships, getting to know our customers better, and interacting them with all. And the very thing like I love about my job is that it allows me to connect with people who have given so much to the community and get to learn from them and also get a glance over how things work in their heads, which obviously give me a perspective on things. With that thought, I'm very excited to introduce my today guest who exactly ticks all the boxes to be featured in this session. We have with us Mauro Chojrin, originating from Barcelona, Spain, and an all PHP person. Mauro has been working as a developer since 2000 and has been getting the hands dirty with PHP since 2003. With his extensive knowledge of PHP, Mauro has now become a PHP trainer, consultant, and technical writer. And that's not all. He even runs his own academy to educate aspiring PHP developers under the name of Lee Web Academy. So we will be taking about all PHP questions around security, performance, versions, PHP-based CMS, updates, and anything and everything we'll cover about it briefly. So yeah, I do have like your questions as well that you shared with us earlier. And before I start throwing up on Moro, let's allow this gentleman to walk us through his journey and exciting anecdotes that come with it. Over to you,
Okay,
Moro.
thank you so much for having me, Jose. This is I'm really excited to be interacting with the community. I try to do this as often as I can, and well, I think you made a perfect introduction of who I am and what's my background and
Yeah.
everything. Mm, I don't think I have much more to add to that. Uh,
All right.
just right now, I mean, I'm currently visiting Buenos Aires, my hometown. But yes,
Hmm.
I live in around Barcelona. Uh,
That's good. So yeah, we have a list of questions like that you guys had shared with us, and we will surely be taking your live questions as well. But due to our time constraints and in respect with Moro busy schedule, I really want to thank Moro for taking us time today. Even
so
though it's currently on vacations in Argentina with his family, and should be having fun right now. So let's dive in and take your questions. So yeah, Moro, like first question is, I think it's about PHP performance. So
mhm.
like can you hear me?
Hello? No, I
Oh,
didn't hear your question.
hello. Now it's better.
Okay. Uh,
Should I repeat my question?
yes, please.
Sure. So, like I said, like I think the first question is around PHP performance.
Yes.
So, like, how do you optimize PHP scripts to ensure the best performance in high traffic scenarios?
Okay, that's a great question. So the, the reality is that there isn't that much you can do about PHP scripts themselves. It's much more about the whole ecosystem or the infrastructure that takes a huge impact in the performance. I mean, of course, there can be some scripts that are really poorly designed and need some optimization, but my advice is always to do that at the very, that should be your last option, because most of the time it's about increase the server memory if you can, or put some cache layer in between. What you need to do there is, well, there are some tools you can use. Of course, one of my favorite is xdebug profiler, that can show you the specific parts of your code that may be coming bottlenecks. So what you want to do is identify those and start, tackling one at a time. And the most common bottlenecks are on the database side. Like bringing data from the database is something that usually takes a very big hit in applications performance. So what you want to do is try to minimize the queries you do to your database, and you can do that by leveraging some cache mechanisms like memcache or Redis or some other in-memory storage. That's like the very basic. Then you have some other tricks that are useful but may not be as impactful, like having like static files deployed over CDNs, so you don't have to you can optimize the time it takes for the client to get your files. But in general, the idea is you want to have your websites be as static as possible. And that is a kind of a contradiction when you think about, well, but why am I doing PHP then? But so it's a kind of a shift in the philosophy. When you're dealing with really high traffic, you want to have a PHP as a tool to build the assets that you will be delivering as statically as possible. So I hope I answered somewhat the question. Is obviously a very complex thing, and it has to do with the specific scenario. But the
Mhm.
general rule is to look for ways to not execute PHP or even MySQL or whatever database in lively. Okay, so that's the general idea. Specifically about PHP scripts, again, it's very rare to find a situation where the PHP is the problem. Like there are probably so many other problems that have a much bigger impact. But if there was really a situation like that, there might be some tweaks you can do to the PHP configuration to make it run a little faster. Perhaps you want to, if you're really looking at very high traffic, you might want to look at doing some asynchronous processing, like leveraging maybe like AMPHP or React PHP or any other asynchronous way to deal with that. Um, Another thing that I would suggest is to try to change the web server that you're using. That has been a really a game changer for me at one time. Like I was using Apache, and when I switched to, well, back then was a light HTTPD, and there was a huge difference. So nowadays, I use Nginx plus PHP FPM whenever I can, and I've been trying a couple of other web servers like I think it was Caddy. I don't remember the name. There are some very specific web servers made for PHP out there, so it may be worth giving them a shot. But yeah, I would say uh, try to fix it from the infrastructure side.
Mhm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so next question is from John. Like he said, which PHP extension or configuration do you recommend for enhancing your application speed?
Okay, so well, lately PHP versions have been very have been building in many optimizations in terms of speed. So for instance, APC is something that you should have enabled, but it comes with I believe from PHP 7.4 or something like that. It already comes bundled with the general PHP installation. So what are the things you can use? Maybe no, I don't think there is one particular extension for speeding up applications. Again, I would try to use memcache, for instance. It's not exactly a PHP extension, but you need an extension in order to be able to use it. So maybe you can use Soul PHP again to do some asynchronous programming, and that can speed up applications.
All right, cool. So yeah, next question is from Harry, and I think like it's this question is related to security. In the
Okay.
realm of PHP, what are your top security practices to prevent common vulnerabilities?
Okay, so that's a great question. So my first advice here is be always be looking at the OWASP. They are very the experts in web security, and they have a specific cheat sheet for PHP secure configuration. So you can look it up. Perhaps I can share the link afterwards. But in general, the whole problem with security comes from bringing data from the outside. And from the outside, I mean, usually people
Mhm.
think of this as a user input. So everybody's kind of aware of the fact that somebody can can put annoying things in input boxes and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But the problem is that's not the only source of problems that you can find. So,
Okay.
and by that I mean when you connect to an external API, for instance, or you
Mhm.
bring data from a file that you didn't generate yourself, that can also
Mhm.
be a source of problems, and that many times goes like overlooked. And
Mhm.
so the very basic again as a concept is validation is the key here. You need to validate every input to your program. And
Mhm.
the good news is most of the time the measures that you can take are really simple. Like you don't really need to do very complicated things. um, for instance, if you're bringing data from the user, you can use
Mhm.
something like PHP has a built-in functions like filter input or stuff like that, which will take care of almost everything. So it's just about having this in mind. You don't really need to code a lot on your own. You just need to be aware of the fact that inputs should be validated all over all over the place.
Mhm.
And particularly when you are going to be, for instance, using some input to build a query that will go into your database, you want to not just take it as as it is and just send it over to the database right away. Now you need to sanitize this data. But then again,
Mhm.
there are tools already built into PHP to perform this for you. So all you need to do is be aware of that and use the
Can you
available tool.
please, yeah, can you please name them? Like, what are the
Yeah,
tools?
sure. So well, I was trying to stick
Mhm.
to the input thing, but so filter input is the probably the best. It all
Okay.
depends on if and that is a tool that comes with PHP itself. It's not
Okay.
dependent on any particular framework or any other thing like that. But if
Okay.
you are using a framework, which by the way you definitely
Mhm.
should be, um,
Mhm.
if you are using any modern framework, these
For
things will be,
instance, Laravel.
yeah, it will be taken care of even if you don't actively do it. So there are many things to be aware of. I mean, many points of potential exploits. For instance, I guess, well, I would say everybody knows, but I'm probably wrong here, and not everybody knows about the SQL injections. But that is
Yes.
something that is very commonly heard. So I guess everybody kind of knows how to defend themselves against SQL injections, which is basically to not allow any input to build an SQL query as it is. So if you use something like PDO, for instance,
Mhm.
if you use prepared statements on PDO, that will take care of doing this for you. So that's a very interesting and very handy tool. But so there are other things that you want to do, like for instance, you want to prevent session hijacking or other more complex things that in order to do that, you want to leverage the fact that if you store information on the session, that is information
Mhm.
that never goes to the client. So you can use like store some secret value in the session, like maybe like part of a secret key, and you share the other part over. over a hidden field in HTML that you produce. And when
Mhm.
you get a post, you check that the key, that the keys match. So since you stored one piece of information on the server side, there's really no way for somebody to tamper with that. Okay, so
Okay.
there are some techniques like that. Then again, it's not really about the tools, because the tools are really simple and they are like publicly available. It's just about,
Mhm.
you need to be aware of what do I need to look out for. That's the thing. And for that, again, I'm going to go back to my first advice: is go on the
Mhm.
A OWASP website, and just read the 10 most common web threats, and you'll be fine with
Okay.
that. You can protect your applications against any of those without going into a very complicated programming or anything like that. Very simple tools will help you get maybe 90% the way, all the way.
All right, that's spot on. So yeah, next question is from Harry, and he's asking about question related to PHP versions. Like, how do you manage backward compatibility issues when transitioning between PHP versions? And we can see like normally after every 6 months or 10 months there are major update. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's really a pain point for many PHP developers, or maybe companies that rely on PHP systems. And so there is like a kind of a tension here, because for the one thing, many people say, well, PHP is too old and doesn't have many modern features, which is not really true, but still many people complain about that.
Sorry to cut you off. Sorry to cut you off. We have seen like many people said like PHP is dead. This is the major discussion nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had that very discussion many times, and quite frankly, I'm a little tired of of that. So it's it's like people come with very much of a, I would say, prejudice, because, and I say this, I said this many times. PHP used to be really a really poor choice, in the past, but that that is like, maybe if you look, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. If you got me at that time, I would agree with you. Like, yes,
Hmm.
it's not the best tool.
Hmm.
But things have happened throughout throughout this time, and
Yeah.
they have improved so much that right now many people who criticize are people who left PHP around version, maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 or something like that. So with current versions,
Hmm.
there's uh, not so many features that you will be missing from other languages. Okay,
Hmm.
so then again, going back to the question. So there is this tension in the core PHP team between how can we move forward while not leaving people behind. So then sometimes it happens that in order to bring PHP to, let's say now we are talking in 2023. So in order to bring the
Yep.
language to our current standards, there has to be some
Hmm.
things that we cannot support anymore. It's simply the way it is. But there is this idea, to try to keep the systems working as long as possible. So
Hmm.
how do you deal with backwards compatibility issues? Well, the whole thing is about, you don't want to like skip versions. You need to be constantly looking at, going to the next available version. Maybe
Yep.
if you are in a working environment where the stakes are high and everything, you don't want to
Hmm.
be like trying the very last version in production, right when it goes out the door. But
Hmm.
at the same time, you don't want to be like 3 versions behind, because then
Yep.
the jump will be very expensive and complex. So
Yep.
if you try to keep up, things don't usually don't become that complex. There is one
Mhm.
tool I really like, which helps a lot in doing these upgrades, which is called Rector PHP, which is like an
Yep.
automated rewriting of the code to
Mhm.
bring it up to more current version. So that is a really great tool. It saves a lot of time doing mechanical work, and not only saves time, but also as it is an automated tool, it can help
Mhm.
make sure you don't miss any place where you need to switch. So that is
So
great.
what do, so what we need about this tool? Like we need to put our website on staging or cloning, and or we can do this on directly our live environment.
No, 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 no. I wouldn't do that on a live. I mean, well, again, I am, I have a gray hairs. I am,
Yeah.
I am a little more conservative than I used to be, like 20 years ago or something. So
Mhm.
I like to sleep at night, and thus I want to make my upgrades offline, make sure everything works, and then
Yep.
go to production. But again, it all depends on what are the stakes anyway. If it's the maybe your uncle's website, you can do a live update.
Let's
If
do
it's a,
it. Let's
a
crash it.
company that depends on this, you want to be a little more conservative. So anyway,
Obviously.
um, this is a particular tool that I was saying, Rector. Another couple of tools that I personally use and recommend are PHP Unit or any other
Mhm.
testing framework to make sure. Okay, I did the upgrade, but now I want to make sure I didn't break anything, for instance.
Yeah.
So these tools help a lot, automated testing. And
Yep.
finally, the other tool that I like to use is Docker to
Okay.
simulate the new environment where I will be pushing my code. So let's say
Yep.
I have a code written in, I don't know, PHP 7.2, and I want to upgrade to 8.0. Okay,
Mhm.
so I will create a new Docker environment to run PHP 8. I will upgrade
Mhm.
my code, run the tests, and everything within the new simulated infrastructure. And once
Mhm.
I'm happy with the result, then I will do the upgrade in production.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the best and great approach we can do.
I think, I mean, it's the way it works for me, and it keeps me sane. I have done different things in the past, and this is what I came to say. Okay, this works for me. It makes me happy.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Cool. So yeah, next question is around database. Like someone, how do you ensure data protection in PHP when handling user input or database interactions?
right. So when it comes to databases, I usually well, I like to rely on at the very bottom, I would say PDO, which is a PHP data objects. I believe it's the library. It's a library that brings like a middle ground between abstraction and low level access to the databases. So
Hmm.
what I like about this is with PDO you can very easily switch the underlying database engine. Like you're not like
Hmm.
married to MySQL or Oracle or whatever. You have a like a
Hmm.
an intermediate layer. It has a
Hmm.
very nice object oriented API. So that's another thing I appreciate about PDO.
Hmm.
Um, and it's usually very good in terms of performance also.
Hmm.
So I usually recommend it. There is, PHP and MySQL are almost like many people think of it as a one thing. It's not really the
Hmm.
case, but I mean it's very common to find PHP and MySQL installations. So in that sense,
Yes.
some people would recommend to go straight with a MySQL specific library to use database.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
the one that is the common standard these days is MySQL I, which is like an
Hmm.
evolution of the original MySQL library. Uh,
And people
it's
also
also
using MariaDB.
okay. MongoDB. Well, I personally don't use Mongo that much,
No,
but
MariaDB. MariaDB.
I'm sorry.
I'm
MariaDB.
talking
Okay,
about.
okay, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Well, yeah, MariaDB in MySQL,
Hmm.
they're pretty much
They're
the same.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, MariaDB is actually like a fork of it's more of a political thing than a technical thing. But so yeah, when I say MySQL, I mean also MariaDB or
Yep.
Percona server, whatever, they're all the same. So what I was saying is you have this library which is MySQLi, which is also a very good one. But the problem there is you are committed to MySQL 100%. So
Yes, that's true.
if you go that way, it can give you a little, and I'm stressing the word little, a little
Mhm.
edge in terms of performance. Yes, that's
Okay.
true. I personally don't think it's really worth to go in that direction. But if you are really facing a big issue with performance, then maybe you want to use MySQLi instead of PDO. Anyway,
Okay.
they both have well, not the exact same API, but they have the
Mhm.
same features, give or take. Particularly in terms of security, again, what I was saying before, you can use prepared statements, which are
Mhm.
very easy to like inject the parameters that you got from the outside, and the library will take care of escaping them and making them play nice with your database. So
Mhm.
this I mean, the only real advice I would say here is don't use like handcrafted SQL statements where you concatenate the inputs right away and make a big SQL string and send it to the
Mhm.
database. That is very dangerous if you
Okay.
do it like that, without any other thing. But if you rely on any of these libraries, you'll be fine.
All right, that's a great answer. So yeah, next question is around frameworks. Like you can see, like there are many frameworks, PHP frameworks, PHP CMS. So what do you think? Like the question is, which PHP framework do you believe offers the best security features out of the box?
All right. That's a hard one.
Okay.
So I
I
okay. So
personally
first of
rely
all,
on Laravel.
yeah, let me do a little disclaimer here, because
Hmm.
it's hard for me to make an impartial answer here, because
Okay.
I have a personal favorite, which is Symfony framework. That is the one
Okay.
that yeah, I honestly, to me, there is no other option out there that I
Okay.
really
That's nice.
trust and feel comfortable with. I mean,
Okay.
I know that there are many others, and
Hmm.
most like from some years ago to today, many other frameworks have become really good. But again, I don't have much experience with other frameworks different than Symfony. I
Hmm.
have tried Laravel at some times. I did work on the maintenance of an application built around on top of Code Igniter, and
Okay.
I did some Send framework at some times. And while they all have like pretty much the same basic concepts, like they're all MVC frameworks, and
Yes.
but because, well, at the end of the day, we're all building pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
It is somehow a matter of comfort or how you like to do things. And
Hmm.
particularly, the what I like about Symfony is
Hmm.
that it's a framework that you can see that it has been designed and it's maintained by engineers. And in terms
All
of
right.
the application of the best practices of the industry, like the solid principles and the encapsulation, it's all about design. It has a great design. Sometimes it
Okay.
can seem a little complex to grasp and everything, but it has become much easier to use up from, I would say, version 3 or 4. There was a huge leap. Prior
Hmm.
to that, the learning curve was like really steep, but nowadays
Hmm.
it's definitely not. So I would recommend anyone watching this give Symfony a try. So that's one thing. And another thing that's very interesting that happened in the PHP world, I don't remember exactly. I'm losing track of time, but let's say 5 years ago, probably a little
Hmm.
more. But
Hmm.
let's say 5 years ago is the appearance of Composer was a game changer completely. Composer is
Hmm.
this the library manager.
Yep.
So what happened, two things is Composer for once, and the other was the appearance of uh, PHP operability framework group. I don't remember exactly the name, but I think it was like that. But it was basically the leaders of every major framework sitting down together and say, okay, how can we make every framework play nice with each other? And that was a
Mhm.
great initiative. And from there, uh, they came the PSR, which are the PHP standard recommendations. So if
Mhm.
it made it really really easy to take the best of each framework and kind of build your own from
Mhm.
the building blocks of others. That's really cool because, for instance, Laravel
Mhm.
has taken and uses a lot of components from Symfony. Uh,
Yes.
and so that's great because as long as we can like share good things within the
Mhm.
community instead of being competing with each other, we can complement each other, and that's great. So um, what I'm trying to say here is like I don't think there is like one particular framework, and the whole concept of framework has been kind of
Mhm.
diluted because for instance Symfony is a framework, but at the same time is a like a toolbox of again many small libraries you can take and combine as you wish. um,
Mhm.
I personally usually just take the whole package and use it for my applications, but I
Mhm.
have done some like small applications where I just take one or two components and build up on those. So again, in terms of security, well, I know the Symfony has a very, very high standard of security built in.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
well, it protects from all the things that we discussed at the earlier, like CSRF, which is cross-site request forgery. And that's one of
Mhm.
the common attacks where somebody can like trick the server into thinking they are an authenticated user when they are really not. So
Mhm.
Symfony has the protection against that kind of threat, and also like XSS, which is cross-site scripting. So it will really protect you from the get-go against a lot of threats. And I guess, well, Laravel probably has the same thing, and so I'm not
Mhm.
really that much aware of what the other frameworks are doing right now.
Okay.
I would say any like major mature framework will probably keep you on the good side, as long as
Yeah.
you follow their recommendations.
Documentation and
Yeah.
and recommendation. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So one more thing, like adding to this question, I recently tried Sulu CMS, and I feel the same. Like the feeling is more likely Symphony. The CMS is secure, and I can see in the list of question like I don't find any question related to CMS. So what do you think about more CMS like WordPress, Drupal, and there are many other
Well,
CMS. So
okay, so
what is your take on it?
right. I'm not really a very much of a fan of CMSs.
Okay, but I
I
can see
mean,
your website is developed on
yeah.
WordPress, the
Yeah.
Liweb
You got
Academy.
me. You
Yeah,
got me. You got me there. And
yeah.
the thing is, as a user, I yeah,
Hmm.
my website is built on WordPress.
Yeah,
So as a user
I
of
love
WordPress,
WordPress
yeah.
and the
But
foot.
again,
Yeah.
as a WordPress user, I am I'm okay with it. I would
Okay.
maybe like some other things, but I started my website way long ago, and I just wanted to I need something to be easy to put in production and to keep updated. So that was my rationale back there, and I said, okay, WordPress seems to be cut for the work, so okay, let's do it, and it works. I mean, you have to it works. If you don't go if you don't go crazy about the plugins, you can have
Yeah.
WordPress working fine for you. uh,
Hmm.
the issue that I find with WordPress is when you want to like go over the hood, like
Okay.
if you need to
If you have a
uh,
basic website, then WordPress is good to go, right? That's what you want to try to say.
yeah, I mean, if you are going to take WordPress and use it as it is,
Mhm.
that's fine. What I don't
Okay.
like is the code behind WordPress. I mean,
Okay.
when I had to, and I didn't do a lot of that, but if you have to like build plugins or make some custom code to be run within the WordPress world, that is something. It's not my cup of tea. Let's say.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't like the way.
what's your take like when you are developing a simple website on WordPress? So do you create by your like from scratch, or do you use any theme or plugins? Like, what's your take on it?
Right. So I don't really use
That's my personal
WordPress.
questions. Okay, that's my personal
No, no,
thoughts.
no, that's
I
fine.
just want to, I just want to learn from you.
Right, right. No, that's fine. I mean, I don't use WordPress, let's say professionally in terms of I don't, I didn't ever like create a WordPress site for a client of mine, for instance.
Okay.
That's
Hmm.
that, but basically that's not the kind of work I do. I usually do more of a like maybe like intranets or some kind of workflow systems or
Okay.
some internal process automation, stuff like that. So it doesn't really match a lot of with what WordPress offers, which is more
Hmm.
like public facing websites and blogs or stuff like that.
Hmm.
So that's why my experience has been like I did a couple of very little tweaks to my own website with
Hmm.
WordPress code, and I didn't really like what I saw in the way
Okay.
that how the code is structured is it's very messy. I would say.
Okay. Let's forget
That
about it. Let's
no
forget
no I
about
mean
it.
that again my take is as long as you don't have to code PHP yourself, you can use
Hmm.
WordPress and be happy and be fine.
Okay.
The problem comes when you need to do some customizations. Um,
Okay.
then uh, I was thinking of Drupal and Joomla and stuff. I think I never used Drupal, but I think
Okay.
Drupal is based on Symfony or has been like ported to Symfony at some point in time.
Okay.
So if I had to put my fingers in there, I think it would be a more pleasant experience.
Okay.
Um, there are some, well, there are many tools out there today, but what I did use was one tool for an e-commerce which was called Oro Commerce, which again
Magento.
was based on
Okay. Yeah.
Symfony,
Our commerce. Yes.
and it was really really good. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking right now I am using for for marketing automation and stuff. I am using an open source project called Motic, which is also built on top of
Okay.
Symfony, and
Nice.
it's really really good. Yep.
Okay, that's good. That's a great answer. So let's move to the next question. It's around PHP for e-commerce. So, like, what are the challenges and benefits of using PHP for building scalable e-commerce solution compared to other languages?
Okay, so the comparison with other languages, I would say there is. So when I'm thinking of other languages, I'm I don't know why, but I'm thinking of Java. So
Okay.
I think there is an interesting comparison because in terms of maybe syntax or the way you read a program in Java and PHP these days is not that far a leap as it used to be. Particularly, I mean, unless you are
Mhm.
using PHP without object orientation, which is something you definitely don't want to do. Um, but assuming you
Mhm.
have an object-oriented PHP application and you have a Java application, you probably will read the code very similar, not exactly the same, but very similar. So the difference comes in terms of how you deploy this application and how you maintain it over time. And the main difference is when you are using Java, you need to like build the whole package, like the jar, or you need to compile a lot of things. Like the building of a package is a thing on its own, and then you deploy. And when it is about PHP, you can build packages and everything, but usually it's about uploading some files into the server and you're good to go. So that's one of the things I really like about PHP is you can get it up and running very, very fast. So you get immediate feedback
Okay.
right away. And that can be a great thing,
Hmm.
or it can be a bad thing, depending on how you do it. But assuming you know what you're doing, that's a great thing. Um, so in terms of e-commerce and how it compares to other languages, well, I don't think there is a particular thing that you can do in PHP that you cannot do in any other language, and vice versa. And particularly when it comes to
Okay.
e-commerce. So
Hmm.
maybe, and I don't know, I'm just speculating here, but maybe given the fact that you can bring up a PHP server like really easily, that
Hmm.
might be easier for you to build like an auto scaling mechanism. And so if you but this has to do with a lot of having some infrastructure knowledge. But if you maybe at some point have like a sales like a, I don't know, how do you call it, like a Black Friday or something like that, where
Okay.
all of the
Hmm.
time you have very little traffic, but at one particular day your traffic will
Spike.
spike. Exactly. So in that scenario, it might perhaps be easier to have a PHP site grow very quickly in terms of
Yeah.
horizontal scaling, like bringing up new servers on the fly. I think that might be easier perhaps with PHP. um, but I guess you can do the same. I mean, you can achieve the same with any other language. It depends on your tooling, I guess. So I don't think then that PHP has any particular advantage over any other language when it comes to doing e-commerce.
Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, next question is related to quality assurance. So what tools do you use to ensure the quality of your application?
Okay, cool. So this is a topic I really like very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So the very basic tool that I would say nowadays any professional or aspiring professional PHP developer should know about is PHP unit. That is like
Okay.
the de facto unit testing framework.
Hmm.
And it's a great tool, really great. And there are, again, there are so many plugins and stuff you can use to improve your tests and stuff. But at the very basic level, I would say you need to have, in order to really be able to give some sort of guarantee about what you're doing, you need to have your code tested, and PHP unit is the very first tool that I would suggest. Then
Hmm.
there is another that I like quite a bit, which is called
Okay.
Codeception, sorry, which is a framework built on top of PHP unit, that will make really easy to test, particularly when it comes to web applications. So it
Okay.
will provide you with browser automation and stuff like that, so you can really do very interesting, and most of all, very easily you can achieve this kind of tests in a very easy way to run. So that's great. And then I used also Behat for behavior driven development, or like how do you call it, the yeah the well, this kind of tests, like user acceptance tests, where you can describe the scenarios. That the Behat works better than Codeception when you are building applications like command line applications or stuff
Hmm.
like that, where there is no graphical user interface. So if you are building a web application, I would say Codeception is a very good tool to create the tests. If you are
Yeah, I use Conception. Like the author is David, based in Ukraine. Yeah.
okay, so there there are many of those.
Hmm.
Probably if you are in Laravel, I heard good things about Pest, but since
Okay.
I'm not a Laravel developer, I can't really vouch for it.
Yeah.
But I think it's good. Um, yeah, so that is yeah, one tool that I would say it's very very important either one. Just pick the one that you like, but please use one.
All right. Okay. That's good. So yeah, one last question is from John, and he's asking like, what tools do you use to make your life as a developer easier?
Oh, great.
So you
Okay,
can add a
so
few tool here, like my personal recommendation here. You can add a few tool here from the development to the production. So yeah.
okay, okay, great, great. So let me think about it for a sec. So the very first tool that I use, and I nowadays I would say I can live without, is a PHP Storm. My
Okay.
IDE is,
Nice.
and yeah, many people complain like, yeah, but the license is kind of expensive. Well, I don't want to judge the pocket of any other developer out there, but I think
Yep.
it's about maybe $70 a year or something like that. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
If you really are doing professional development, and if you're working for a company, you you probably can have your company pay for the license. And if you're working for yourself, I think it's really worth the investment, because the time and the headaches that it will save you completely, it pays for itself. So, and I'm not an affiliate of JetBrains or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. Just to be clear. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's one. The other tool that for me was a game changer was Xdebug, and
Okay.
I'm not really using it that much nowadays, because I rely much more on automated testing tools. But even though, when things get rough and I can't really figure out just from the test results what's going on, I will
Mm-hmm.
resort to Xdebug. And before I implemented automated testing into my workflow, Xdebug
Mm-hmm.
was really a game changer completely. So
Nice.
those are probably well. Then of course, Composer, I guess it comes without saying, but it
Yep.
should be part of the toolbox. um PHP 10 is another one that I probably don't use as much as I should, but it helps you deal with stuff like preventing, or yeah, preventing errors from going into production, because it will check that the well, since PHP is an interpreted language, there are some situations where you can like find an error when the code is executed and follows a very particular flow. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
with PHP 10, you will get like a notification before time. It will do something like a compilation. It's not exactly the
Mm-hmm.
same, but it's like the very first step of the compilation, which is the syntactic analysis and checking that types match every now and then. Okay, so that's a very good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, I already mentioned Docker. I
Yep.
am really a big fan of Docker. I used to be a
Mm-hmm.
very big fan of Vagrant until I found Docker, and now I'm
Mm-hmm.
preaching everyone should adopt Docker, for
Yeah.
for development and also for production. I
Auto
think
scaling. Yeah.
it saves you so many pains. Like
That's true.
the other day I had a client call me about they're hosting upgrading the PHP version, and they couldn't do anything about that, and it completely broke their application because it wasn't ready. And so I said, well, why don't you use if you had it on Docker,
Yeah.
you don't care what happens around you. So I think that is probably the best feature of Docker, or
Yeah.
the best
That's true.
the benefit it brings to the table, really.
Yes,
So
agree.
what else? Well, I mentioned code section as well. So, well, Git, of course, I couldn't
Yeah.
live without Git these days. And I used to be a very big fan of Subversion SVN, but
Okay.
yeah, and I did some really nice things with that. I used to be very good with branching with SVN and
Okay.
stuff that people would
Nice.
complain about it. Then again, I think Git is definitely superior, and it's a standard nowadays, so you can really run from it.
Yeah, that's
And
true. Like,
so then I used a little script, deployer to deploy my
yeah.
applications. There are many of those out there nowadays, but yeah, in general, I try to rely on automation as much as I can. So these
Yes.
days, I'm trying to move maybe away from these scripts in and into GitHub Actions or something like that. That will automate the whole. I just need to do git push,
Mhm.
and then I know that things will get to production safely and everything. So that's great.
Yeah, like I
And
can see. Yeah, I can see like your workflow is mostly automated. Like you use mostly those tools like which automated your process. That's a great approach.
well, I, at my heart, I am a very lazy person. So
So am I.
why do I have to work if I can have the machine work for me? that's my
That's
that's my model. So yeah,
fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, I know people who take this way further than I do. I am,
Okay.
in the process of bringing more and more automation into my into
That's a
my life, at
great
least
change.
in terms of work. But
Yeah,
I think that's the way to go. Yeah.
that's great. That sounds amazing. Okay, so like, all right, like, so that was pretty fun. And like, thank you all for the questions as we have reached the conclusive part of the session. But before we sign off, I want to request more, like, if there is anything you like to share before we wrap up.
Okay, so I don't know. Many of the stuff I produce is in Spanish, so I don't know how
Yeah.
many Spanish speakers will be out there. But right now, I'm working on a Docker guide for PHP developers, which at the time will be again all in Spanish. But who knows? Perhaps later I will translate it to English. So
Mhm.
if somebody wants to hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter or something and ask for it, then
Sure.
maybe if there is enough interest, I will produce an English version of it.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so like, all right, well, Mauro, like, please accept our kind gratitude for taking the time to join us today. Your
Sure.
insights and expertise have added immense value to our session, and we are truly honored to grace your presence, Mauro. Thank you for sharing, enlightening, and enriching our community. And thank you all, well, as for joining for this session. I really appreciate you all sending your questions. And if I could not get your question, I apologize and hope to address in a future session. Stay curious, stay connected, and until next time, take care. Thanks, Mauro. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited.
Thanks for your time.